Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. The shriek of a klaxon jolted Jace Steelwind from beneath the maintenance panel where he'd been working for the past 6 hours. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he banged his head against the metal casing, cursing under his breath. Maintenance drone Steelwind, your efficiency rating has dropped 3.7% this cycle, chirped the station's AI through the comm implanted in his ear. This deviation will be noted in your permanent record. Thanks for the update, Vox, Jace muttered, wiping grease from his hands onto his already filthy gray jumpsuit. The small Infernum Station logo, a stylized flame encircled by chains, was barely visible beneath the grime, just like his status on this oversized tin can hurtling through space, barely visible. He glanced at his reflection in a polished section of wall paneling. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his once vibrant copper hair had faded to a dull rust. At 28, he looked a decade older, worn down by the endless work shifts and the weight of his heritage, the son of Grand Enforcer Vortex, the bastard son to be precise. The living reminder of the mighty Vortex one genetic impurity, falling for a non-compatible woman. The scandal had been buried, the woman dispatched to some distant mining colony, and Jace hidden in plain sight as just another drone in the vast machinery of Infernum Station. A distant explosion rocked the station, nearly knocking him off his feet. This wasn't a standard alarm. "Vox, what's happening?" Jace demanded. "Unidentified spacecraft breach in Sector 47B. All maintenance personnel are instructed to continue routine duties. Enforcer units are responding." Sector 47B. That was only 2 levels down from his current position, in the most neglected part of the station's underbelly. Curiosity overrode his usual caution. Responding to unexpected system failure in Sector 47B, Jace lied smoothly to the AI. "No such alert has been registered." Jace tapped his implant, activating the scrambler he'd built from scavenged parts. The AI's voice dissolved into static. It would reset in 30 minutes, just enough time to investigate without triggering a search for his whereabouts. The corridor to Sector 47B was eerily deserted. Jace moved quietly, using maintenance shafts to avoid detection. The smell hit him first, ozone and something else, something alien yet strangely sweet, like exotic flowers burning. He rounded the corner and froze. A small craft had smashed through the outer hull, the breach already sealed by emergency force fields. The vessel itself was unlike anything in the hegemony's fleet, sleek, with curves reminiscent of a predatory sea creature from old Earth. Its surface shimmered with a pearlescent material that seemed to breathe. The craft's hatch had been torn open from the inside. Drawing closer, Jace noticed a trail of iridescent purple droplets on the deck plating. Blood? He traced its path until the trail disappeared into a ventilation shaft. A soft groan emanated from inside. Training and self-preservation screamed at him to alert the enforcers. Instead, he found himself prying open the shaft's access panel and peering inside. Bright blue eyes glowed in the darkness, locking with his own. "Help me," whispered a melodic voice that seemed to resonate directly inside his skull. Jace reached in and found himself touching skin, smooth, warm, and distinctly purple. He helped extract the figure from the cramped space, his breath catching as she emerged into the dim emergency lighting. She was humanoid, but unmistakably alien. Her skin was a deep violet that shimmered with subtle patterns when she moved, like constellations shifting across a cosmic sky. Her face was hauntingly beautiful, high cheekbones, full lips curled in pain, and those eyes, those impossibly blue eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Her body, barely covered by a torn silvery garment, displayed curves that defied both human standards and possibly physics itself. Blood seeped from a wound in her side, glittering like liquid amethyst. "You're hurt," Jace said unnecessarily, reaching for his multi-tool to cut a strip from his uniform for bandaging. The alien woman ignored his statement, instead reaching up to touch his face with trembling fingers. "Jay Steelwind," she whispered, "I finally found you." He recoiled as if burned. "How do you know my name?" Before she could answer, a new alarm blared, the distinctive three-pulse wail that indicated enforcer deployment. "All personnel, be advised," announced a cold voice that made Jace's blood freeze. "Commander Krell, his father's most ruthless lieutenant. A dangerous alien asset has escaped custody. It is to be considered highly valuable and extremely dangerous. Any information leading to its recovery will be rewarded. Any assistance provided to this fugitive will be punishable by immediate void execution." The woman's eyes widened with fear. "They cannot find me," she pleaded. "You don't understand what they'll do, what they've already done." Jace weighed his options in milliseconds. Harboring an alien fugitive was an automatic death sentence. But something about her knowing his name, about the desperation in those cosmic eyes, made his decision for him. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Yes." "Then we need to move. Now." Jace's quarters were little more than a storage closet with a bunk, but at least the door had a lock he'd personally upgraded. It wouldn't stop an enforcer squad, but it would slow them down long enough for him to access the escape route he'd spent years secretly preparing. The alien woman collapsed onto his bunk, her breathing labored. "You need medical attention," Jace said, rummaging through his meager supplies for the contraband medikit he'd assembled. "No time," she said. "They're already scanning for my biosignature." "Who are you?" Jace demanded, applying a pressure seal to her wound. "And how do you know who I am?" A smile flickered across her face despite the pain. "My name is Tiona Thorncrest. I'm Nixian, and I know you because—" She hesitated. "Because where I come from, we've met before." "That's impossible. I've never left this station, and aliens aren't exactly welcome aboard Infernum." "Not here," she said. "Not now. I came from your future." Jace barked a laugh. "Right. And I'm actually the Emperor's favorite dancing bear." "Your father is Grand Enforcer Vortex," Tiona continued, her voice growing stronger. "Your mother was Catherine Steelwind, a tech specialist from the outer colonies. They had one night together during the Centauri uprising. When she became pregnant, he buried her record and assigned her to mining outpost K-12. You haven't seen her since you were 5 years old." The blood drained from Jace's face. "Nobody knows that. Nobody." "I know everything about you, Jace," she said softly. "In my timeline, you become something they fear more than death itself." Before he could respond, Tiona sat up suddenly, her face contorting in pain. "I need to remove this." She gestured to her torn garment. "What? No, you're injured." "Nixian cellular regeneration is inhibited by synthetic materials," she explained, already pulling at the fabric. "Our healing requires skin exposure to ambient energy fields." Jace turned away quickly as she removed the garment, his face burning. "A little warning next time," he muttered. "Is human nudity taboo? Fascinating. Our records didn't emphasize this aspect of your culture." "It's not. I mean, it depends on context," Jace stammered, fixating on a rust spot on the wall. "You can turn around now," she said after a moment. Jace reluctantly turned, relieved to see she'd wrapped herself in his blanket, though it left her shoulders and arms bare. The wound on her side was already looking better, the edges knitting together with a faint luminescent glow. "So you're from the future," he said skeptically. "Prove it. Tell me something that's going to happen." "Time doesn't work that way," Tiona replied. "By coming here, I've already altered probability streams. But I can tell you what would have happened without my intervention. In 3 days, during your maintenance rotation in Sector 23, you would have discovered a power fluctuation in the Enforcer barracks. Investigation would have led you to find evidence of the Purge, a station-wide elimination of all deemed genetically inferior, including you. Jace felt the blood drain from his face. The purge has been rumored for years, but nobody's found proof. You would have, and you would have died trying to warn others. Her eyes softened. In my timeline, your death sparked a revolution that ultimately failed. I'm here to ensure it succeeds this time. Why me? I'm nobody. That's what they want you to believe. She reached beneath the blanket and extracted a small metallic sphere no larger than a marble. It pulsed with an internal light that shifted between purple and gold. This is why I risked everything to find you. What is it? A nexus core, the culmination of quantum symbiote technology, far beyond what the enforcers currently use. It doesn't just enhance physical abilities, it connects to the fractal memories of all previous hosts across multiple dimensions. Jace eyed the sphere suspiciously. The symbiotes only work with pure genetic profiles, the elite. My mixed heritage makes me incompatible. That's why I'm stuck fixing toilets instead of commanding squadrons. That's what they want everyone to believe, Tiona said, her voice hardening. The truth is that the most powerful hosts have always been those with diverse genetic backgrounds. The hegemony suppresses this knowledge to maintain control. A sudden pounding at the door made them both freeze. "Maintenance drone Steelwind," came a mechanical voice. "Random genetic scan in progress. Open your door immediately." Jace's heart hammered against his ribs. Genetic scan. Today? That's not scheduled for another week. "They must have accelerated the timeline," Tiona whispered. "They're looking for me, and anyone who might have helped me." "Hide," Jace hissed, pointing to the small storage compartment beneath his bunk. Tiona shook her head. "They'll find me. These scans can detect Nixian biology." She pressed the nexus core into his palm. "Take this. Whatever happens, don't let them find it." "What are you going to do?" Her lips curved into a sad smile. "Create a diversion." Before Jace could stop her, Tiona wrapped the blanket more securely around herself and moved to the door. "Wait. Maintenance drone Steelwind, this is your final warning," the voice repeated. "Remember," Tiona said, turning to him one last time, her cosmic eyes burning into his. "In my original timeline, we eventually became very close, before everything went wrong." She pressed the door release. 3 enforcer drones hovered outside, their scanning beams immediately locking onto her. "Unregistered alien life form detected," they announced in unison. "Subject identified as escaped asset NT-427. Stand down for capture." "Run, you fools!" Tiona taunted, dropping the blanket and sprinting down the corridor in the opposite direction from where Jace stood frozen in the doorway. The drones gave chase, their alarm signals blaring. Jace clutched the nexus core, feeling it warm and pulse against his palm. His mind raced with impossible decisions. The alien woman, Tiona, had thrown herself to the wolves to protect him. A stranger who claimed to know him from a future that would never happen now. He should escape, hide, wait for the enforcers to take her away and for life to return to its miserable normalcy. Instead, he found himself shoving the core into a hidden compartment in his boot and racing after her, toward the sound of pursuit and into a future he couldn't begin to imagine. The enforcer pursuit drones cornered Tiona 3 levels down in a neglected cargo bay. Jace crouched behind a stack of decommissioned power cells, watching in horror as Commander Krell arrived with a full squad of elite enforcers. "Specimen NT-427, Krell announced, his voice amplified by his helmet speakers. "Your escape attempt has been logged as further evidence of Nixian untrustworthiness." Tiona stood defiantly, still naked, her violet skin gleaming under the harsh overhead lights. Despite being surrounded, she showed no fear, only contempt. "My name is Tiona Thorncrest," she proclaimed, not your specimen number. Krell circled her, the silver insignia of the hegemony prominently displayed on his black armor. Fascinating. The subject believes its designation matters. He turned to his squad. Prepare for transport to the extraction labs. Jace's hand unconsciously moved to his boot where the nexus core rested against his ankle. He had no plan, no weapons, and no chance against trained enforcers. Yet, something kept him from fleeing. Scan it for any stolen technology, Krell ordered. As a drone approached Tiona with scanning equipment, she suddenly spat in Krell's face, her saliva leaving a sizzling mark on his cheek. "I'll tell you what you want to know," she said loudly, "about Jace Steelwind." Jace's heart stopped. Krell wiped his face, examining the purple residue on his glove. Steelwind? The maintenance drone? He laughed. What could possibly be significant about that genetic reject? "He's more important than you can imagine," Tiona said, her voice carrying clearly to where Jace hid. "In my timeline, he's the one who brings down the entire hegemony." The commander's amusement vanished. Sedate the prisoner. Full containment protocols. As they dragged Tiona away, her eyes seemed to find Jace in his hiding place. "Don't rescue me yet," her gaze seemed to say. "Wait." Jace paced his quarters that night, unable to sleep. The nexus core sat on his palm, pulsing gently like a tiny heartbeat. What had she meant about waiting? How long? And why had she revealed his name to Krell? He nearly jumped out of his skin when his doorcom chimed. "Steelwind," came the flat voice of Sarima, another maintenance worker. "Meeting at 0400, sublevel 19, junction 7B." The comm clicked off. A meeting? Jace had no friends among the station staff. He'd purposely kept to himself for years. This had to be a trap. Yet at 0350 he found himself making his way to the specified location, the core tucked securely in his boot. Junction 7B was an ancient water recycling hub, long since bypassed by newer systems. The perfect place for an ambush or a clandestine meeting. To his surprise, Sarima wasn't alone. 5 other station workers stood in a loose circle, their faces tense and watchful. "He came," said an old man Jace recognized as Darrow, chief of waste management. "Doesn't mean we can trust him," countered a young woman with cybernetic eye implants. "He's Vortex spawn." "Shut up, Lena," Sarima snapped. "He's one of us." "What exactly is us?" Jace demanded. Sarima's tattooed face remained impassive. "People who know about the purge." Jace's blood ran cold. "What do you know about that?" "Enough to know it's scheduled to begin in 3 days, said Darrow. "Enough to know we're all on the list." Jace thought of Tiona's warning. The timing matched perfectly. "What does this have to do with the alien they captured today?" he asked cautiously. Lena's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on him. "So you do know about her. Interesting." "The Nixian told Commander Krell that you would bring down the hegemony," Sarima said. "Word has spread through the station. The enforcers are looking for you." "That's ridiculous," Jace protested. "I'm nobody." "Maybe," said Darrow. "Or maybe the alien knows something we don't. Either way, you're marked now." Sarima nodded. "They're holding her in Central Plaza, public humiliation before they ship her to the research labs on Proxima III. "Why tell me this?" Jace asked. "Because we need to know if you're who she thinks you are," Lena said bluntly. "And if you're willing to risk everything to stop the purge." The Central Plaza was crowded despite the early hour. Enforcers had mandated attendance for the demonstration, a euphemism for public punishment. Jace kept his head down, hood pulled low over his face as he pushed through the crowd. In the center of the plaza stood a metal post. Chained to it was Tiona, now dressed in the transparent jumpsuit reserved for high-security prisoners. Her wounds had healed, but her vibrant skin had dulled to a muted lavender. They had drugged her, clearly, but her eyes remained alert, scanning the crowd. Commander Krell paced before her, his amplified voice booming across the plaza. Let this be a lesson. The alien infiltrator sought to corrupt the hegemony from within, spreading lies about one of our own maintenance drones being some kind of revolutionary, the crowd murmured. Jace noticed several people glancing around, perhaps looking for the drone in question. Before her execution, she will experience the consequences of her deception. Krell gestured, and an enforcer stepped forward with a bucket of foul-smelling waste. The alien who dared to love a half-breed will be treated accordingly, Krell announced, hurling the first handful of garbage at Tiona. It struck her face, leaving a trail of filth across her purple skin. She didn't flinch. The crowd hesitated until enforcers shoved waste containers into their hands. Participate or be marked for additional screening, they threatened. Slowly, people began throwing trash at Tiona. Food scraps, industrial waste, personal garbage, all rained down on her slender form. Through it all, she stood tall, her eyes continuing to search the crowd. Then, barely audible above the commotion, she began whispering a single word, over and over. Jace. The name rippled through the gathering. People turned to their neighbors, questions in their eyes. Who was Jace? Why did the alien keep saying that name? Standing in the crowd, Jace felt the nexus core in his boot suddenly grow hot, almost painfully so. He gritted his teeth against the sensation as it spread up his leg and throughout his body. Without warning, images flooded his mind. Battlefields across alien landscapes, hand-to-hand combat techniques from a dozen different martial traditions, the perfect angle to strike at an enforcer's armor where the shield generators connected to the power supply. He knew these things with absolute certainty, as if he'd spent lifetimes learning them. Jace, Tiona whispered again, and this time her eyes found his in the crowd. The core pulsed once more, and suddenly he understood. She had planned this all along. The public spectacle, the whispered name, the humiliation designed to create gossip that would spread throughout the station. She was creating a legend. As if reading his thoughts, Tiona smiled through the filth covering her face. The nexus core burned hotter, and Jace knew what he had to do. He pushed forward through the crowd until he stood at the edge of the clear space around the post. Commander Krell's back was to him, still encouraging the crowd's participation. That's enough, Jace said, his voice stronger and more commanding than he'd ever heard it. The plaza fell silent. Krell turned slowly, his face registering first confusion, then recognition, then contempt. Maintenance drone steel wind, he sneered. How appropriate that you've come to witness your alien whore's punishment. Jace felt the core's energy surging through him now, illuminating pathways in his mind he never knew existed. Time seemed to slow as he saw exactly how this would play out, as if the core was calculating probabilities and feeding them directly into his consciousness. My name, Jace said, stepping forward, is Jace Steelwind, son of Grand Enforcer Vortex and Catherine Steelwind of the Outer Colonies. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Several enforcers raised their weapons. And I'm here, Jace continued, to inform you that the purge has been cancelled. Krell's face contorted with rage. Seize him! Two enforcers lunged forward. Jace moved with a fluid grace that felt both foreign and completely natural. He sidestepped the first attacker, using the man's momentum to send him crashing into his companion. Both went down in a tangle of limbs and armor. The core's heat spread through Jace's entire body now, and with it came knowledge, tactical assessments, combat strategies, the exact layout of Central Plaza's security systems. The Nexus has awakened, Tiona called out, her voice suddenly clear and strong. The time of reckoning has come. More enforcers rushed forward. Jace found himself moving in patterns he'd never trained in, but somehow knew perfectly, ducking under energy batons, redirecting blaster fire back at its source, disabling armor systems with precise strikes to vulnerable connection points. The crowd backed away in terror and awe as Jace tore through the Enforcer squad with impossible skill. 3, 5, 7 elite troops lay unconscious or disabled around him. Krell drew his sidearm and fired directly at Jace's heart. Time slowed to a crawl. Jace saw the energy bolt approaching and, guided by the core's influence, shifted just enough for it to pass harmlessly over his shoulder. The shot continued on its trajectory and struck the control panel for Tiona's restraints. The chains fell away with a clatter. Tiona moved with blinding speed, her body apparently free from the effects of whatever drugs they'd given her. She flipped through the air, her leg connecting with Krell's helmet with enough force to crack its reinforced surface. The commander staggered back, blood streaming from beneath his visor. "You're dead," he gasped. "Both of you. The entire hegemony will hunt you down." Jace felt the core pulse once more, and words came to him that felt like they belonged to someone else. Someone older, wiser, and infinitely more dangerous than a mere maintenance drone. "Tell my father," he said, his voice resonating with unusual power, "that his son is coming for him, and this time, I won't be alone." Alarms blared throughout the station. Reinforcements would arrive within minutes. Tiona appeared at his side, her fingers intertwining with his. "You were magnificent," she whispered, "just like I remembered." "This was your plan all along," Jace realized. She smiled, filth still streaking her beautiful face. "Part of it. The rest." She squeezed his hand. "The rest depends on what you choose to do now." Around them, the crowd had not dispersed despite the alarms. They stood watching, many with expressions of wonder or dawning hope. Sarima pushed forward from the onlookers, followed by Lena and several others from the secret meeting. "We're with you," she said simply. "Whatever comes next." Jace felt the weight of their expectations, along with the unfamiliar power coursing through his veins. The core had chosen him. Across time and space, it had found him. And now, standing in Central Plaza with the station's downtrodden looking to him for leadership, Jace Steelwind made his choice. "Let's show the hegemony what real power looks like," he said, and led them into the unknown. The first night after their escape from the plaza, Jace collapsed onto the floor of an abandoned storage unit in Infernum's forgotten lower levels. His body trembled uncontrollably, muscles spasming from exertion. What he'd done, what he'd somehow known how to do, was impossible. "What's happening to me?" he gasped, watching in horrified fascination as blue-gold filaments crawled beneath his skin like living circuitry. Tiona knelt beside him, her face now clean of the filth from the plaza. "The nexus core is integrating with your system," she explained, placing a cool hand on his burning forehead. "Billions of quantum nanites are flooding your bloodstream, mapping your neural pathways, enhancing your cellular structure." Jace convulsed as another wave of pain crashed through him. "It's killing me!" "No," Tiona insisted, her cosmic blue eyes intense in the dim emergency lighting. "It's remaking you. Your hybrid genetics are causing an accelerated integration process. The core has been waiting for someone like you for centuries." Through gritted teeth, Jace demanded, "Explain better." Tiona's hands moved to his temples, her touch oddly soothing. "The Nexus core is comprised of self-replicating quantum nanobots that exist simultaneously in multiple dimensional states. They're restructuring your neural pathways to accommodate the fractal memories, experiences from thousands of hosts across infinite timelines." As if triggered by her explanation, Jace's vision kaleidoscoped. He witnessed battles on alien worlds, felt the sting of exotic weapons against his skin, tasted strange atmospheres. Languages he'd never heard flowed through his consciousness, suddenly as familiar as his native tongue. "They're building new connections in your brain," Tiona continued, "creating quantum entanglement between your neurons, allowing instantaneous data transfer from the core's memory banks. The nanites can transmute matter at the subatomic level, converting your own cellular energy into repair mechanisms when you're injured, enhancing muscle fiber density, improving synaptic response time. Jace watched in amazement as a cut on his arm from the plaza fight sealed itself, the skin knitting together with that same blue-gold luminescence. In simple terms, Tiona said with a hint of a smile, you're becoming the perfect integration of human adaptability and technological advancement, the weapon we need to bring down the hegemony. Weapon, Jace echoed weakly, as another surge of information flooded his consciousness. Combat techniques from 1,000 martial traditions, the precise weaknesses in enforcer armor, tactics used by long-dead generals on worlds that no longer existed. Sarima appeared at the door, her tattooed face unreadable. The others are settled. 23 escaped with us. She eyed Jace's trembling form. Will he survive? He's stronger than he looks, Tiona replied, not taking her eyes off him. By morning, he'll be ready to begin training. Training for what? Jace managed to ask before darkness claimed him. Morning came too soon. Jace opened his eyes to find himself sprawled on a makeshift bed, his body no longer in pain but humming with unfamiliar energy. He sat up, noticing immediately that his movements felt different, smoother, more controlled, as if each muscle fiber responded with perfect precision. The integration completed while you slept, Tiona said. She sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, her violet skin glowing faintly in the dim light. How do you feel? Jace flexed his hand, watching the subtle play of tendons and muscles with newfound awareness. Like someone upgraded my entire operating system. I can feel everything. My heartbeat, individual muscle contractions, the electrical impulses in my nerves. He stood, testing his balance. What should have been disorienting felt natural, as if he'd always had this level of bodily awareness. The nanites have enhanced your proprioception, your body's sense of itself in space, Tiona explained, rising to her feet with fluid grace. They've also improved your visual processing, auditory range, and reaction time. Jace noticed he could hear conversations from adjacent rooms with perfect clarity, distinguish between the different power frequencies of nearby equipment, even detect the subtle changes in Tiona's respiration as she moved closer to him. This is, he searched for words. Overwhelming, she suggested. Incredible, he corrected. But how do I control it? There's so much information. That's what training is for. She gestured to an open area they'd cleared in the abandoned storage unit. We start now. For the next 3 hours, Tiona guided Jace through a series of exercises designed to help him access and control the Nexus Core's abilities. She demonstrated stances and movements that seemed impossible until he attempted them and found his enhanced body capable of matching her. The core provides knowledge, she explained, circling him as he held a complex balance position, but skill requires practice. Your muscles need to learn what your mind already knows. Sweat poured down Jace's face as he maintained the stance. How many people have had this core before me? None exactly like it. The Nexus core I gave you is the culmination of centuries of development. It contains the accumulated memories of countless hosts, but it has never been fully integrated with a suitable genetic match until now. She placed her hands on his shoulders, adjusting his position slightly. The contact sent an electric surge through him that had nothing to do with the core's enhancements. Your genetic structure, your father's enforcer lineage combined with your mother's unique mutations from the outer colonies, provides the perfect template. That's why they separated you as a child. Not because you were incompatible, but because you were too compatible. You threatened their control over symbiote technology. Jace absorbed this revelation as he flowed into the next stance. So everything they told me about being genetically inferior was a lie? A calculated one. The hegemony maintains power by controlling who has access to enhancement technology. Her eyes hardened. Just as they maintain control by exploiting my people. Jace lowered his arms, finally giving in to the question that had been burning in his mind. What did they do to the Nixians? Tiona's expression darkened. That's a lesson for another day. For now, we focus on building your connection to the core. She stepped closer, placing her palm directly over his heart. Close your eyes. Feel the nanites flowing through your bloodstream. They respond to conscious direction. Try to gather them here. Jace concentrated, surprised to find he could indeed sense the microscopic machines. They hummed with energy, waiting for his command. He mentally directed them toward his chest, where Tiona's hand rested. A gasp made him open his eyes. Beneath her palm, his skin glowed with blue-gold light pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Perfect, she breathed, her face inches from his. You're a natural. The air between them charged with tension. Her eyes dropped to his lips, then back up. For a moment it seemed as if she might lean in closer. Instead, she stepped back abruptly. Let's try something more challenging. The rest of the day passed in intense training. Jace discovered he could accelerate his healing by directing the nanites to injured areas, enhance his strength by optimizing muscle function, and access specific memories from the core's vast database by focusing on particular skills or knowledge. By evening, exhaustion overtook him again, though less severely than the previous night. He collapsed onto his makeshift bed, watching as Tiona conversed quietly with Sarima and the other refugees who had joined their escape. Despite his fatigue, his enhanced hearing caught their whispered conversation. We received word from Sector 12, Sarima reported. The purge timeline has been accelerated. Tomorrow, maybe sooner. After our escape, I expected nothing less, Tiona replied. What about the fighters you mentioned? 5 have agreed to meet us tomorrow at the old maintenance junction. They want proof this isn't a trap. They'll have it, Tiona assured her. Once they see what Jace can do, they'll join us. Later, when the others had gone to their separate sleeping areas, Tiona returned to find Jace sitting up, waiting for her. You heard, she said. It wasn't a question. Every word. The purge is happening sooner because of us. She nodded, settling beside him on the floor. In my timeline, it began with Infernum Station, then spread throughout the hegemony. Billions died. Anyone with even slightly deviant genetics, anyone who questioned authority. And I supposedly stopped this in your future. You tried. Her voice softened. But you failed. You weren't prepared. You didn't have the right allies. That's why I came back, to ensure a different outcome. Jace studied her face, noticing subtle patterns in her violet skin that shifted with her emotions, constellation-like arrangements that brightened and dimmed. The core supplied the knowledge that these were neural-responsive chromatophores, a uniquely Nixian trait. Tell me about us, he said suddenly. In your timeline, you said we were close. A faint smile touched her lips. We were more than close, Jace Steelwind. The patterns on her skin shifted to a warmer hue. We were bonded, what humans might call married, though for Nixians, it goes deeper. A neural synchronization that allows sensory sharing. Jace's mouth went dry. And you came back in time, knowing I wouldn't remember you at all. I came back knowing I might find a different version of you, but the core of who you are, that remains constant across timelines. Her eyes met his. I recognized it instantly. The air between them thickened again. This time, when Tiona leaned forward, she didn't pull away. Their lips met, and Jace experienced something extraordinary. The nanites in his system responded to the contact, creating a feedback loop of sensation that intensified the kiss tenfold. When they finally separated, both were breathing heavily. That was Jay struggled for words. The nanites responding to emotional stimuli, Tiona explained with a hint of mischief in her eyes. They enhance all experiences, not just combat. Their second kiss lasted longer, deeper. Jace felt the core pulse within him, feeding him instinctive knowledge of exactly how to touch her, where to trace his fingers along the sensitive patterns on her skin. Later, lying together on the narrow bed, Tiona traced patterns on his chest where the blue-gold filament still occasionally shimmered beneath his skin. "Tomorrow we begin Phase 2, she murmured, "building our army." The underground fighting arena sprawled across an entire sub-level of Infernum Station, its existence officially denied by station authorities, but tacitly permitted as a pressure valve for the station's constant tensions. Here, the rigid hierarchies briefly dissolved as people of all castes came to watch illicit battles and place forbidden bets. Jace pulled the hood of his cloak lower, concealing his face as he followed Sarima through the rowdy crowd. Behind him, Tiona moved with predatory grace, her own features hidden beneath a hooded cloak. "Remember the plan," Sarima muttered. "Fight, win, impress the right people. Don't reveal everything." Jace nodded, his enhanced senses cataloging every detail of the arena: exit points, guard positions, the composition of the fighting cage. The core supplied him with probability calculations, identifying optimal strategies for various opponents. "The Phantom is registered for the third match," Sarima continued, using the alias they'd created for him. "Your opponent is Krax the Demolisher, an ex-enforcer discharged for excessive brutality, perfect for our purposes." They reached the fighters' preparation area, where combatants of various species prepared for their matches. Jace's gaze landed on a mountain of muscle and cybernetic enhancements that could only be Krax, a hulking figure with obvious military-grade augmentations that should have been confiscated upon his discharge. Tiona's hand brushed his arm. "Remember, use just enough to win impressively. Save the real show for when it matters." The first two matches passed quickly, brutal affairs that left the crowd roaring for more blood. When Jace's name was called, the Phantom, making his arena debut, a mixture of jeers and curious murmurs rippled through the audience. He entered the cage, keeping his movements deliberately stiff, projecting the nervousness expected from a newcomer. Across from him, Krax cracked reinforced knuckles and leered. "Fresh meat," the ex-enforcer rumbled, his voice distorted by the vocal modulators embedded in his throat. "They're scraping you off the floor with a spatula, boy." The bell rang, and Krax charged like a cybernetically enhanced bull. Jace allowed the core to guide his movements, but restrained its full potential, making his evasion look desperate rather than calculated. He took a glancing blow to the ribs that would have shattered bones in his previous body, but now merely triggered a flood of nanites to the area, preventing damage. For 2 rounds he played the part of the outmatched but surprisingly resilient underdog, taking hits that would have crippled an ordinary human while landing just enough counterstrikes to stay in the fight. The crowd, initially dismissive, grew increasingly engaged as the supposedly one-sided match stretched on. In the 3rd round, Jace caught Sarima's signal from the sidelines. Time to step it up. When Krax charged again, Jace no longer retreated. He stepped into the attack, moving with sudden, fluid precision. His fist struck a specific point on Krax's cybernetic arm where flesh met machine, exploiting a vulnerability that only someone with intimate knowledge of enforcer augmentation would know. The limb went dead, hanging useless at Krax's side. The crowd fell silent. "What the?" Krax began, before Jace struck again, disabling his other arm with the same precision. Now the audience was on its feet, confusion and excitement rippling through the stands. Jace sensed a particular energy emanating from the VIP section, Focused attention from figures wearing concealing attire but radiating the unmistakable aura of authority. The council members. They were here, and among them, a presence that resonated with Jace on a genetic level. His father, Grand Enforcer Vortex, had come to watch the fights. As if sensing his distraction, Krax recovered enough to land a desperate kick that connected with Jace's midsection, sending him flying across the cage. The crowd gasped, then roared as Jace flipped in mid-air, landing in a perfect three-point stance that no ordinary human could have managed after such a blow. Something shifted in Jace then. The core pulsed, and suddenly he wasn't just accessing combat knowledge. He was channeling the personality of a long-dead warrior whose memories lived within the nexus. "Is that all you've got, big man?" Jace heard himself say, his voice carrying an unfamiliar swagger. "I've seen maintenance drones hit harder." The move wasn't planned. It came from the warrior personality temporarily dominating his actions. "Ladies, gentlemen, and variants," he announced, playing to the crowd with a charisma that wasn't entirely his own. "Allow me to demonstrate what real fighting looks like." What followed was no longer a match but a performance. Jace moved with impossible speed and precision, turning combat into an art form. He flipped over Krax's desperate charges, landed strikes that precisely disabled the ex-enforcer's remaining augmentations, and all the while kept up a running commentary that had the audience alternately gasping and laughing. When he finally ended the match with a theatrical spin kick that sent Krax crashing unconscious to the mat, the arena erupted. From the corner of his eye, Jace caught Tiona's expression, a mixture of amazement and concern. This hadn't been the plan. He'd revealed too much, too soon. But as he scanned the VIP section, he saw his father leaning forward, eyes narrowed in calculation rather than recognition. And beside Vortex sat a figure whose presence sent a fresh surge of nanite activity through Jace's system, a response to perceived threat. Commander Krell, his face now scarred from their previous encounter, whispered urgently into Vortex's ear. The core pulsed again, and this time Jace received not combat knowledge but a data packet, security codes, access routes, the exact location of something called the Archives of Origins. Tiona's voice suddenly filled his mind, transmitted through the quantum link between her and the core. "We need to leave. Now." But before he could exit the cage, a private security detail approached, elite guards wearing the insignia of the station council. "The Phantom," their leader addressed him with cold formality. "The council requests your presence for a private audience." Behind the guards, Jace spotted Sarima slipping away through the crowd, following the contingency plan. Tiona had already vanished. The core calculated his options, displaying probability trees in his mind's eye. Fighting would cause casualties among innocents. Fleeing would trigger a station-wide hunt. Only one viable path remained. Jace bowed with the flourish of the warrior personality still influencing him. "I would be honored to meet the esteemed council," he replied, allowing himself to be escorted toward the VIP section, toward his father, and toward the truth hidden in the Archives of Origins. The council chambers gleamed with opulence that mocked the squalor of Infernum's lower levels. Jace stood before the 7 hooded figures seated on elevated platforms, his senses hyper-alert. His father, Grand Enforcer Vortex, occupied the central position, a tall, imposing man with the same copper hair Jace had inherited, now streaked with gray. "The mysterious fighter who has captivated our arena," Vortex intoned, his voice carrying the artificial resonance of enforcer vocal enhancements. "Remove your hood completely." Jace complied, revealing his face fully. He sensed the flicker of recognition in his father's eyes, quickly suppressed but unmistakable to his enhanced perception. "Your combat techniques display elements of classified enforcer training," Commander Krell accused from Vortex's right, the scar across his face livid against his pale skin. Techniques accessible only to those with proper authorization. Explain yourself. The core pulsed, feeding Jace information about the room's security systems, the council members' vulnerabilities, and, most crucially, the nearby entrance to the archives of origins. A plan crystallized in his mind. "I'm a fast learner," Jace replied with deliberate arrogance, "and enforcers aren't as discreet as they believe when practicing their precious techniques." Krell slammed his armored fist on the table. "Impossible. No ordinary human could replicate—" "Who said I was ordinary?" Jace interrupted, allowing the blue-gold filaments of the core to briefly shimmer beneath his skin. The council members recoiled. "Symbiote technology," one whispered. "But his genetic profile—" Vortex leaned forward. "What is your name?" With calculated precision, Jace replied, "You named me Jace, 28 years ago, before you sent my mother to die in the mines of K-12. The chamber erupted in chaos. Guards stepped forward, weapons raised. Krell shouted orders, but Vortex raised his hand, silencing them all with a gesture. "My son is dead," Vortex stated flatly. "He was genetically incompatible, a failed experiment." "Another lie to maintain your precious control," Jace countered. "The archives contain the truth, don't they? About me, about the Nixians, about what the hegemony really is." Vortex's eyes narrowed. "The archives are restricted to council members only." "Not anymore." Jace activated the core fully, allowing the blue-gold energy to envelope his body. In one fluid motion, he leapt across the chamber, bypassing the guards with inhuman speed. His palm slammed against the hidden access panel Tiona's information had revealed, the nanites in his system interfacing directly with the security protocols. The massive doors to the archive slid open as alarms blared. "Stop him!" Vortex roared, but Jace was already inside, the doors sealing behind him as the core overrode the security systems. Within the archives, data terminals hummed with forbidden knowledge. Jace moved straight to the central interface, his hands flying across the controls as the core guided his actions. Through his quantum link, he sensed Tiona and the others mobilizing throughout the station. "I'm in," he transmitted to her. "The rebellion begins in 30 minutes, came her reply. "Find what we need." Jace accessed the classified files, downloading centuries of suppressed history directly through the nanites in his fingertips. The truth unfurled before him in horrifying detail: the hegemony's rise to power, the exploitation of the Nixians, and the real purpose of the Purge. The Nixians hadn't just been template for symbiote technology, they were its creators. Their natural ability to connect with quantum particles had been weaponized, their DNA harvested for generations. The survivors had been scattered across the galaxy, their civilization destroyed to hide the truth. And the Purge wasn't merely population control. It was genetic warfare designed to eliminate anyone with Nixian genetic markers that had spread throughout humanity over centuries of interbreeding. Billions would die to protect the secret of the hegemony's stolen power. As Jace absorbed this knowledge, a hidden door within the archive slid open. Vortex entered alone, his enforcer armor activated and glowing with power. "My son," he said, his voice oddly gentle, "you've surpassed all expectations." Jace turned from the terminal, the data transfer complete. "I'm not your experiment." "No, you're much more." Vortex approached slowly. "You're the culmination of a plan centuries in the making. Why do you think I arranged your conception? Your mother was one of the few humans with significant Nixian genetic markers. I needed a child who could fully integrate with the advanced symbiote prototypes." "You abandoned me," Jace spat. "Left me to rot in the maintenance levels." "I protected you," Vortex countered. "Kept you hidden from those who would have dissected you to study your genetic uniqueness. And it worked. Look at what you've become with that alien's core technology. Imagine what we could accomplish together." For a moment, Jace wavered. The core identified the genetic truth in his father's statement. He hadn't been an accident but a calculated creation. Then his comm implant crackled. "It's time," Tiona's voice came through. "The purge has been initiated early. They're sealing off the lower levels now." Clarity returned like a thunderbolt. "You're stalling me," Jace realized, "while your enforcers murder thousands." Vortex's expression hardened. "Sacrifices for the greater good. Join me, son. Rule instead of serve." "I already chose my side." Jace activated the core fully, his body transforming as billions of nanites restructured his cellular matrix. Blue-gold energy cascaded around him, solidifying into armor that merged technological precision with organic fluidity. Vortex attacked first, his enforcer enhancements making him devastatingly fast, but not fast enough. Jace moved through combat forms drawn from 1,000 lifetimes of warriors, each strike precisely calculated by the core. "You rely on stolen power," Jace said, deflecting a barrage of energy blasts from his father's gauntlets. "I've merged with mine." The battle raged through the archives, ancient knowledge destroyed in their wake. Vortex fought with the desperate ferocity of a man defending not just his life, but his entire worldview. Yet with each exchange, Jace grew stronger, the core adapting to his father's tactics in real time. Finally, Jace pinned Vortex against the central terminal, his hand at his father's throat. "Finish it," Vortex gasped. "Prove you're worthy of the power you've stolen." Instead, Jace accessed the station's communication systems through the terminal. "This is Jace Steelwind," he announced, his voice broadcasting to every level of Infernum. "The Council has authorized the murder of thousands of innocent people today under the name of the Purge. I've uploaded proof to all public terminals. The enforcers aren't your protectors, they're your executioners." He released his father, stepping back. "I won't kill you. That's the difference between us." Vortex's expression contorted with rage. He lunged forward, a concealed blade extending from his armor, only to freeze mid-attack, his body suddenly paralyzed. "But I might," came Tiona's voice from the doorway. She stepped forward, her hand extended, violet energy crackling between her fingers. "Nixians have more abilities than your scientists ever discovered." Throughout Infernum Station, chaos erupted as Jace's broadcast reached every level. But unlike the uncontrolled riots the Council had feared, this was orchestrated rebellion. Sarima and the others had spent days positioning people strategically, distributing weapons, and preparing for this moment. Jace and Tiona fought their way to the central control hub, where Commander Krell had barricaded himself with elite enforcer units. "Time to end this," Jace said, his quantum armor now fully manifested, a blue-gold exoskeleton that moved as if it were part of his own body. The door to the control hub disintegrated beneath his enhanced strength. Inside, 20 enforcers aimed weapons at the entrance. "The Death God comes," one whispered, backing away as Jace stepped through the smoke, his armor radiating energy that cast his face in eerie shadow. "The Death God of Infernum," another echoed fearfully. The name sparked something in the core, and suddenly the energy around Jace's head coalesced into a skull-like helmet, eyes burning with quantum fire. The battle was brutally short. Enhanced by the core, guided by the combat memories of 1,000 warriors, Jace moved like a force of nature. Enforcers fell before him, their armor useless against his precisely targeted strikes. Krell alone stood his ground, activating a prototype combat suit that rivaled Jace's quantum armor. "I should have killed you when we found you with the alien," Krell snarled, launching a barrage of energy blasts that Jace deflected with contemptuous ease. "You should have," Jace agreed, closing the distance between them in a blur of motion. "But then you'd never know how badly you underestimated us both." Their combat shook the control hub, systems shorting out around them as energy discharges fried delicate equipment. Krell fought with the desperation of a true believer, convinced of his righteousness even as his world collapsed around him. In the end, it was not Jace who defeated him. As Krell prepared a final desperate attack, Tiona appeared behind him, her hands glowing with violet energy. She placed her palms against his helmet, and the commander screamed, a terrible sound that cut off abruptly as he collapsed. "What did you do?" Jace asked, his skull helmet retracting to reveal his face. "Showed him the truth," Tiona replied grimly. "All of it, at once." His mind couldn't handle it. Their victory was short-lived. A station-wide alert blared. The hegemony's response had arrived. Elite Void Commandos, the most feared military unit in the galaxy, were boarding Infernum. "They'll kill everyone," Sarima reported, her face grim as they gathered in the control hub. "Void Commandos don't take prisoners." Around them, the rebel forces prepared for a last stand. They had freed thousands from the Purge's death squads, but now faced an even deadlier threat. Tiona pulled Jace aside, her cosmic blue eyes intense. "There's one solution, but it comes with a cost." "Tell me." "The core can generate a quantum field that could repel the commandos, but it would require full synchronization, merging your consciousness completely with the nexus." "What's the catch?" Jace asked, recognizing her hesitation. "You might lose yourself," she admitted. "The personalities in the fractal memories could overwhelm your identity, and the energy required," she faltered, "it could kill you." Without hesitation, Jace cupped her face in his hands. "If it saves these people, it's worth it." Their lips met in a desperate kiss. This time, the quantum connection between them flared to life, and Jace felt her consciousness brush against his. Fear, determination, and beneath it all, a love that transcended time itself. "There's something else you should know," she whispered against his lips. "In my timeline, this confrontation with the Void Commandos was where you were captured, leading to your later execution." Jace smiled. "Then we're already changing history." They barely had time to prepare before the Void Commandos breached the control hub's outer defenses. Hundreds of black-armored elite soldiers poured in, their weapons cutting down rebels with ruthless efficiency. Standing at the center of the hub, Jace closed his eyes, allowing the core to fully activate. Blue-gold energy erupted from his body, forming not just armor but a pulsing field that expanded outward. The nanites in his system multiplied exponentially, consuming his own cellular energy to power their transformation. Pain unlike anything he'd experienced tore through him as the core restructured his consciousness, integrating the fractal memories not just as information but as living experiences. 1,000 lifetimes flooded his mind, warriors, leaders, lovers, villains, all fighting for dominance. Through the chaos, one anchor remained. Tiona's consciousness linked with his, guiding him back to himself whenever he began to drift away. The quantum field expanded, engulfing the entire hub. Void Commandos froze in place as the field disrupted their neural systems and armor interfaces. Some simply collapsed while others were thrown backwards by concussive waves of energy. In the center of the storm, Jace's physical form began to change. Multiple versions of himself manifested around his body, ghostly projections of alternate timelines. A ruthless warlord wielding energy blades, a tribal chieftain with ritual scars, a cold scientist with calculating eyes, countless variations of Jace Steelwind from infinite realities, all converging in this crucial moment. Through their mental link, Tiona pushed her own consciousness deeper into his, fighting to preserve his core identity as the alternates threatened to tear his psyche apart. "Stay with me," her voice echoed in his mind. "Remember who you are." A Void Commando commander broke through the quantum field just enough to fire a desperate shot, not at Jace, but at Tiona. The blast caught her squarely in the chest, throwing her across the hub. Jace's concentration shattered. The quantum field pulsed erratically as he rushed to her side, cradling her bleeding form. "No," he whispered, feeling her life force fading. "Not like this." In his desperation, Jace accessed a memory he hadn't known existed, an ancient Nixian healer who had once merged with the earliest version of the core. The knowledge flowed into him, guiding his hands as he directed the nanites into Tiona's wound. "Live," he commanded, pouring his own life energy into the connection. The nanites responded, flowing from his body into hers, repairing damaged tissue, regenerating organs, restoring neural pathways. But the cost was immense. Each nanite transferred drained his own strength, dimming the quantum field protecting them. As Void Commandos regained mobility and closed in, Jace made his choice. He diverted all remaining energy to healing Tiona, leaving himself defenseless. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was her eyes fluttering open, brilliant blue against violet skin. Jace awoke to unfamiliar sensations, softness beneath him, the absence of pain, and, most surprisingly, sunlight on his face. He opened his eyes to discover he lay in a bed within a circular room with large windows overlooking. Trees? Actual trees, not the simulated greenery of station hydroponics. "Welcome back to the land of the living," came a familiar voice. Tiona sat beside his bed, her violet skin radiant in the natural light. She wore a simple white garment that accentuated her curves, and her cosmic blue eyes sparkled with a mixture of relief and mischief. "Where are we?" Jace asked, his voice hoarse from disuse. "What happened?" "Infernum Station is now officially autonomous," she explained, helping him sit up. "After you collapsed, something extraordinary happened. The core generated a quantum pulse that disabled every piece of hegemony technology on the station, including all Enforcer enhancements and the Void Commando systems." "And the people?" "Forming a new government. Sarima is leading the council, with representatives from all levels." Tiona smiled. "You've been unconscious for 3 weeks while your body recovered. I had to transfer nearly half the nanites from your system to mine during the healing process." Jace noticed the faint blue-gold shimmer beneath her violet skin. "You're connected to the core now, too?" "We both are," she confirmed. "Differently than before, but perhaps better, balanced." She took his hand, entwining their fingers. "And we're on Sanctuary, a hidden Nixian outpost, one of the few places my people still exist freely." Memory returned in fragments: the battle, Tiona's injury, his desperate attempt to save her. "I thought I was dying," he admitted. "You almost did." Her expression grew serious. "But it seems the core had other plans. When you transferred the nanites to save me, it created a permanent link between us, a true Nixian bond. Your consciousness called to mine across the threshold, and I pulled you back." Outside the window, Jace could see other buildings nestled among the trees, an entire settlement hidden from the hegemony's reach. "What happens now?" he asked. "That depends," Tiona replied, moving to sit beside him on the bed. "The rebellion has just begun. Infernum was only the first step. The information you broadcast has reached other stations, other worlds. People are questioning the hegemony for the first time in centuries. And us." Her lips curved into a smile that made his heart race. "In my timeline, this is where our story really began." She leaned closer, her breath warm against his lips. "The death god of Infernum and his Nixian companion, leading a revolution across the stars." Jace laughed, pulling her into his arms. "That skull helmet was a bit much, wasn't it?" "I thought it was sexy," she admitted, running her fingers through his hair. "Very intimidating, very primal." Their kiss deepened, the nanites in both their systems enhancing the connection until it was impossible to tell where one consciousness ended and the other began. Later, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the hidden Nixian settlement, a communication arrived from Infernum Station, footage of celebrations throughout the levels, former casts mingling freely, and at the center, a makeshift monument bearing Jace's name. "You're a legend now," Tiona teased, her arm around his waist. "The hero who defeated the Void Commandos and liberated Infernum." "We're a legend," he corrected. "None of this would have happened without you crossing time to find me." She looked up at him, her expression suddenly vulnerable. "I need to tell you something. My mission isn't complete." She hesitated. "The quantum disturbance that allowed me to travel back will reappear soon. I was supposed to return once I'd ensured your survival." Jace felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. "You're leaving?" "I don't have to," she said quickly. "But there's a cost to staying. Possible quantum collapse that could affect multiple timelines." The core pulsed within him, offering data on quantum mechanics he'd never studied, but suddenly understood perfectly. "Or," he said slowly, "we could both go forward." Tiona's eyes widened. "What?" "The nanite link between us. It creates a stable quantum loop. If we both entered the portal—" He trailed off, the implications unfolding in his mind. "We could return to my timeline with everything we've learned here," she finished, excitement building in her voice. "Change the future as well as the past." "The rebellion here has begun," Jace said, looking at the celebration footage. "Sarima and the others can continue what we started, but in your future—" "The hegemony still rules," Tiona confirmed, "with even more brutal methods." Jace took her hand, feeling the nanites pulse in synchronization between them. "Then the death god of Infernum and his Nixian companion have work to do." 3 days later, when the quantum disturbance manifested above the Nixian settlement, two figures stepped into its swirling energies hand in hand. The blue-gold and violet energies surrounding them merged into a brilliant flash that rippled across the quantum membrane of reality itself. On Infernum Station, a new plaque was added to the monument. They fought not just for our present, but for a future across time itself. And in a timeline not yet written, a quantum portal opened, disgorging two warriors with power unlike anything that dimension had ever seen, ready to continue a revolution that spanned not just space, but time itself. As they emerged into this new future, Jace pulled Tiona close, his quantum armor materializing around them both protectively. "Next time," he said with a grin that matched her own, "let's arrive with a little less drama." "Where would be the fun in that?" she replied, her cosmic eyes sparkling as she surveyed the world they had come to save. "Besides, you loved rescuing me. The end and the beginning." Dear listener, as I place the final words on this quantum-cross tale of Jace and Tiona, I find myself wondering if their story resonated with you as deeply as it lived in my imagination. Creating a narrative that balances hard sci-fi concepts like quantum nanites and fractal memories with the raw humanity of forbidden love and revolution proved more challenging than I anticipated. Did you feel the electric tension between our unlikely heroes? Did the death god of Infernum's journey from maintenance drone to legendary warrior capture your imagination? And most importantly, did Tiona's devotion across timelines move you? I ventured into ambitious territory here, attempting to weave complex scientific concepts with visceral action and genuine romance. Some moments may have soared while others faltered, but such is the nature of creative exploration. I'd be grateful to hear your thoughts on what worked and what didn't. After all, like the Nexus core itself, stories only truly come alive when they forge a connection with those who experience them. Until our paths cross again across the quantum membrane of imagination, the author